What if I told you there's $1 billion Zionist budget and there's a high chance you're the one that's supposed to say how it's being spent? Except if you're like me, you haven't heard of it and you have no idea what they're spending the money on today. Well, keep watching as I'm going to show you exactly what that is, and some of the stuff is crazy. Okay, so if you're new to the channel, I'm Joseph. I make videos defending Israel, and I was recently complaining to a friend that despite my videos being watched hundreds of millions of times, I only raise $600 a month to pay for them. And they must be sadists, as they chose that as the time to tell me about a $1 billion budget that's spent on Zionist projects every single year, except hardly anyone's heard of it. So I asked them to tell me more, and they replied with 2 words: Zionist Congress. Zionist Congress. Okay, so if you're anything like me and you hear those 2 words, you're thinking of Herzl, Weizmann, Ben-Gurion. You're thinking of the pioneers in the institution that shaped the Zionism of the past. But you're probably not thinking that it's shaping the Zionism of the present. Well, I certainly wasn't. And if they truly are distributing a $1 billion budget every single year, that's a huge amount of money. That's like the GDP of some nations like Samoa. What on earth are they spending all that money on? Look, I need to find out more, so I'm going to start making some calls. Okay, so I've got a lead. A friend of mine is connecting me with the chair of the World Zionist Organization. Now, as I understand it, they're responsible for implementing the Zionist Congress, and then the Zionist Congress tells them what to do. It's an interesting relationship. Okay, so I've arrived at their building, and here's the best part. It's the old Israeli parliament, and the room we're meeting in is David Ben-Gurion's old office. How cool is that? After being given a VIP tour of the building, and while I was on that tour, I actually met the head of the Jewish agency. I then went to meet Yaakov in his office, and I immediately started asking my questions. Very, very briefly, if you could, just describe what the World Zionist Organization is.
The World Zionist Organization is the same body that Benjamin Zev Herzl established 126 years ago in Basel, the first Zionist Congress. This man understood that it is necessary for Jews to return home, to return to Israel, and to establish a Jewish state here. He went against the tide because people had gotten used to the diaspora. They prayed 3 times a day to return to Israel, but in practice, hardly anyone came here, to Israel. He succeeded in recruiting 208 delegates from around the world, to the first Zionist Congress, and there he established the World Zionist Organization, just like that. And the primary goal of the World Zionist Organization was to establish the State of Israel. And thank God, after 51 years, this country was established very, very much thanks to the World Zionist Organization, and since then we have served as a kind of parliament for the Jewish people. We also address the challenges that the Jewish people face in terms of settlement, Aliyah, Hebrew, issues of Jewish identity and education. The World Zionist Organization, thank God, does a lot for the Jewish people and the State of Israel. Over the years, 3 subsidiary entities were established for the World Zionist Organization's endeavors. One is the KKL-JNF, another is the Jewish Agency, and the third is the United Israel Appeal. This system serves as the national institutions. And you, today, have the privilege to visit us here in the building of the national institutions, the building where the State of Israel was founded.
People don't comprehend not only the importance of this institution in relation to the Jewish people and Jewish history, just sitting in this office that has shaped the course of Jewish history, has had a profound influence in the past, and is still having a profound influence today. Because, as I understand it, there is a large budget that the WZO and the Zionist Congress uses to combat things like anti-Semitism, encourage Aliyah to Israel, as you've mentioned, strengthening now or rebuilding the communities in the north and the south that have been decimated. And so I've heard rumors from $1 billion to $5 billion. Is this publicly available information? How is it distributed? Can you talk about the budget? Are the rumors close to true?
I want to clarify. The World Zionist Organization, in terms of liquid funds, is the least wealthy entity among the national institutions. But, as I explained, we are 100% owners of KKL-JNF and 50% owners of the United Israel Appeal and the Jewish Agency. I'll tell you the budget of each one of these organizations. Nothing is secret. Remember, the ownership of all these organizations belongs to the Jewish people, to you and me. Our grandparents all contributed to the blue box of KKLJNF to redeem lands here, right? And today we manage these assets and these budgets to benefit the Jewish people. The annual budget of the World Zionist Organization is around $50 million. The budget of United Israel Appeal for the year, which I remind you is in donations to Israel, is around $200 million. The budget of the Jewish Agency is around $400 million. And the budget of KKLJNF, which is the largest budget, is 1.6 billion shekels per year.
So there you have it. There's around $1 billion budget that's spent every single year on Zionist initiatives. It's been confirmed. It exists. And so obviously the next question is, what are they spending it on? And so Yaakov walked me through some of the incredible projects that they fund to do with fighting anti-Semitism, promoting Aliyah. But one of the initiatives that really stood out to me, it was incredibly moving, was this one.
I want to share with you an incredible project that we launched in October 2023, when we realized that one of the biggest challenges was providing alternative housing for evacuees. We launched an amazing project where we reached out to Jews around the world who have apartments in Israel that they typically use during Passover or during Sukkot, and it was right after Sukkot. We approached the Jews of the world and asked them, "Give us your homes, and we will be legally liable for everything that happens to them, and we will transfer them to families from the South who need them." We called this project, My Home is Your Home. It's amazing. We received 500 applications from Jews around the world who gave up their homes. By the way, some of them were incredible houses, which they agreed to let their brothers, who they didn't know, live in. It was just heartwarming.
Now at this point, you probably think that I came into this interview blind, knowing nothing other than there was a rumor of a large budget. But I'd actually done some homework, you see. I wanted to know what they were spending this money on in the lead up to October the 7th. This is one of the darkest days of Jewish history, and there's obviously been a tsunami of anti-Semitism in the wake of that, which has really emphasized the pressing need for Aliyah, the pressing need for a Jewish state. And so I headed to the World Zionist Organization's website to look at what resolutions the Zionist Congress had adopted in the lead up to October the 7th. What was the money being spent on? So these are just some of the resolutions, and a lot of them are very sensible, like promotion of Aliyah, the unity of the Jewish people, combating anti-Zionism on campus. Nothing objectionable there. That's exactly what you'd expect a Zionist Congress to be focusing its energy on. However, they weren't the only resolutions. There were some resolutions that just seemed odd. They seemed to have more to do with the bickering between Orthodoxy and Reform Judaism than Zionism, more to do with fighting the American culture war than fighting the literal war that Israel is forced to fight for its very survival. And so let me share some of those resolutions with you. Actually, sorry, before we do that, I am going to add some important context. You see, I'm presenting these resolutions as controversial, so it's only fair that I say that these were passed at the last Congress, so they're not a reflection of Yaakov because they were before he was the chairman. That said, they do reflect where the Congress was, and this is one of those resolutions. The Zionist Congress in favor of strengthening the relationship between the LGBTQIA communities in the diaspora and the State of Israel. Obviously, I get why this issue is important to so many people, but we're talking about a moment in history where Israel has never faced such a broad and united attack. A war on seven fronts, a publicity war, anti-Semitism spiraling out of control. This is where our resources should have been, preemptively working against that before the tsunami struck. But I'm going to continue reading the resolutions because this was just the first one. Preserving a healthy climate for Israel's future. Establishment of an egalitarian prayer space at the Western Wall. Recognition of support for the LGBT community. Separation of religion and state. Now, if you're anything like me, you're probably sitting there thinking, what? what on earth does this have to do with Zionism? And maybe going even further than that, like one of my first thoughts were, well, a lot of this has got to do with how Israel is set up. But there's already a system in place to deal with how Israel's run. It's called the Knesset. It's called the democracy. If you don't like how Israel is, simple. Make Aliyah, vote in the elections. But despite these resolutions confusing me, I have no problem with any of them. In fact, every single one of these resolutions is good. And I'll tell you why. Actually, better than that, I'll let Yaakov explain why.
The Zionist Congress is the General Assembly of the World Zionist Organization. It is actually a kind of parliament of the Jewish people, and it convenes only once every 5 years. It is not an independent organization. It is an institution that convenes once every 5 years in elections held worldwide. About 1/3 of it is according to the representation in the Knesset in Israel. 1/3 is in elections in the United States, and 1/3 is the rest of the countries in the world, either by elections or agreements. There truly isn't another body that includes all the streams within the Jewish people, all groups from right and left, religious, secular, and everything in between. And they choose. The Congress elects the leadership of the World Zionist Organization. I had the honor of being elected 4 years ago at the Zionist Congress. It's a great privilege. It is the same model that Herzl started. And I have the privilege today to continue and lead the Jewish people and the Zionist movement.
Did you catch that? The Zionist Congress is completely democratic. It's supposed to reflect the will of the Jewish people. And if you think that it doesn't, well, there's a simple solution. Vote. 1/3 of the votes came from America. And in the last election, the largest slate in America was Reform Judaism. So of course, progressive causes were championed at the Congress, and those resolutions were adopted because that was what was important to the electorate in that election. But we are in a moment of Jewish history, which wherever you sit on the political divide, whether you're Orthodox Reform, whether you're left-wing, right-wing, we are in a moment of history where we need to pull together and fight for our very survival. And so there are many different slates that you could vote for. And I'm going to let Yaakov explain how Americans can vote, how Brits can vote, how Jews can vote in this coming election.
The beautiful thing about the Congress is that every Jew in the world, and you gave the example of the United States, so let's talk about the United States. Every Jew in the United States who hears us now can, between Purim and Passover, between the 10th of March and the 5th of May, visit the AZM website. That is the American Zionist movement. Fill in his details, to declare that he is Jewish, to declare that he believes in Zionism. Then he pays a one-time $5 payment with his credit card to verify that he is real, not for the money. Then he can vote. There are about 40 slates you can vote for, from the most extreme left to the most extreme right, from the most religious to the least religious, and from the center. And everyone can read the ideology and everyone can relate to one of them. As I said before, I am a representative of World Likud here. Our party in the United States is ZOA, the Zionist Organization of America, which is a center-right party, a party for the entire Jewish people, a party that looks at the religious the same as the secular, at the secular the same as the religious, at the left wing the same as the right wing, because right now we are focused on unity, and that is the call of the hour today.
So whether you're a left-wing Jew, a right-wing Jew, an Orthodox Jew, a Reformed Jew, whatever kind of a Jew you are, I can assure you there is a slate in this coming election which will align with your values. Yaakov is on the Likud slate, and he was telling me in this coming election, his biggest focus is on Jewish unity, is on achdut, is on coming together to recover collectively from the trauma of October the 7th and rebuild and heal as a people. Which is actually why this time round, I'd vote for Yaakov, for World Likud. In America, that's the ZOA. Because as far as all the slates go, they're the one that aligns the closest to my Zionist values and what I think a post-October 7th vision should be. Having said that, I don't know why I'm being so generous, because the most important question I asked, I didn't like the answer to. So can you remember at the beginning of the video when I came to learn of this $1 billion budget because I only have $600 a month? Well, I wanted to know if there'd be any chance that the WZO would be able to write out a big check to the Israel advocacy movement to help us make these videos that fight anti-Semitism and inspire Zionism. So I asked Yaakov, is that a possibility? And this was his answer.
Look, our funds are action-oriented. We are not a foundation that distributes grants. We are an organization that generates activity.
That'll be a hard no then. Okay, which that's a bit of a pill to swallow, because it would have been lovely to have a little tiny piece of that pie, but I do understand why they can't. And if you would like to step up where the World Zionist Organization wasn't able to help, then you can head over to this page, and with your support together, we can make many, many more videos winning hearts and minds for Israel and fighting those that rise up to harm the Jewish people.